This video is brought to you by Miniature Market. Thousands of board games, discounted prices, miniaturemarket.com.
Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today we're going to be building a village. But my village is going to be different from your village, different from your friend's village, and even as you play the game, villages are going to be changing, new buildings are going to be coming out, new rules are going to be coming out. Today we're taking a look at Charterstone from Stonemaier Games. This is a hugely anticipated game because it is a legacy style, which means the game will change as things go on, and it is for 1 to 6 players, and at its core it is a worker placement game. So I am not going to spoil anything for you here. I'm going to give you an overview of what it looks like as you're setting up for the first time and give you some of the basic mechanisms in the game to show you how it's played, and then I'll see you on the other side for my non-spoiler final thoughts. Now here's the board for Charterstone. Again, I'm not going to show any spoilers. I'm going to show you as if you were setting up the game for the first time. Now as you can see here, in this big board here, there's a center area here, I'll zoom in just a moment, called the Commons. And then there's some different sections that are each known as different charters. Now the game does play 1 to 6 players, and each of these charters has a charter box. So at the beginning of the first campaign, the players that you're going to be playing the whole campaign with, because it is best played if you play with the same players throughout all 12 plus games, so the first 12 games of the campaign. So each player is going to choose a charter, take a charter chest, which will have all the pieces and some cards and things like that that you'll take to start the game out. But each charter has its own charter chest, and you'll stay that charter for pretty much the whole game. So again, each of these charters does have some components. They have 2 workers, they have a scoring marker, and they have a bunch of influence tokens that will be used to take additional actions on the board. And again, they each get a persona to start with. And then when you get your persona, you can name it, and you'll have this at the beginning of the game, and it kind of goes with your charter. Now the campaign is 12 games long. Afterwards, you can continue to play the game as a worker placement game, but each game is going to have a certain scoring. You're trying to get glory by scoring points. And as I mentioned, the board's empty mostly at the beginning of the game, but the commons is there. Now how it works is on your turn, you're going to place a worker and do an action. So you could place a worker, the green player could place a worker in the treasury. This says basically give any resource of your like to get a coin. I'll show you what those are in just a moment. If somebody else goes here later, they bump this player and this player gets their worker back. Well, that's important because if all your workers are out when it's in your turn, you have to spend your turn to reclaim your workers. So you're either placing worker and doing the action, or you're reclaiming your workers back so you can then place them. But workers bump other workers, and that's an important mechanism in the game. Now the different resources for the game are these nice wooden components. You have grain and wood, brick, pumpkins, metal, and coal. There's tons of each of these. I just put one of each to show you what they are like here. The coins are amazing. They are heavy, chunky metal coins. They are very nice to handle. There's just one denomination. That's all you really need in this game. But I love the coins in this game. Now, there's a lot of different ways to get points in this game, but one of the main ways is to build buildings. When I place a worker here, I would have to give up 3 of those influence and 4 resources that are shown on the building that I'm trying to build. I'm not going to show you the buildings because I don't want to give away anything, but once you build it, you'll end up putting it most of the time in an empty plot in your area. So this is a legacy game, so you will be stickering things to the board and things like that. You'll be getting 5 points for that. Now anytime you do one of the 3 major things, which is building buildings, opening up crates in buildings, and doing objective cards, you'll be moving this progress track down. This essentially, you started at a certain player range, and as it goes down, different things will happen as it gets to different spots, but when it gets to the end, that will be the end of that game. Now the Charterstone itself, this die will be rolled at the beginning of the game. Let's show you who the start player is, but you can also go here to open crates. Again, these are part of buildings. I don't want to show you this, but essentially there's buildings that have these crates. And you could spend 2 influence and 4 coins to open it. You'll get 5 points, move the progress track. And when that happens, you'll be typically unlocking new parts of the game. Now in this index box are a ton of cards. This is pretty much filled up all the way at the beginning of the game. I'm not going to show you any of this, but you'd open it up and the crate would tell you that you unlocked which card or cards to pull out, and that will change the game. The scriptorium holds all the components. The archive is where you basically put cards that have been used up and need to be thrown away. And then there's different tuck boxes which will release new information and new things throughout the game. Another major way to get points is to go to the Grandstand. You'd spend an influence and you can complete a goal and get 5 points. Now when you spend an influence, you actually put it on the one that you've done. So if you have diversified production, one of each of the 6 resources, when you go to that grandstand, you place it here, you'll get the 5 points. This is having 6 coins, and this is paying your dues, essentially having 3 influence tokens on the quota track. Let's go talk about that. These are sort of 3 of the beginner ones, and as you can imagine, more of these come out throughout the game. So these will swap and change every game, but this deck will get bigger throughout the campaign. Now that quota track is over here. You use the cloud port to get there. You'll get 3 points and you can drop something off at the quota. So essentially, if you have any resources, 1, 2, or 3, you can drop them off and get, say, an additional point, or coins or cards that we're gonna get to in just a moment. You can also go here, which will allow you to move up on reputation, which brings us to the next. So this is an easy way to get rid of things that you have extra of to get points, sometimes up to 4 points or 3 points in reputation. So it's a good place to turn things into points. That reputation track we just talked about were some different buildings, and as you saw, the quota track can help you move down there. As you place it there, you'll start at a certain player range, and people will be placing things there. These are sort of end game points. Whoever has the majority will get 10, second majority 7, third majority 4th, and ties are friendly. You'll both get the amounts for that spot. So that's just another thing to think about throughout the game. Also throughout the game, there'll be different guideposts that come here. Those essentially are temporary rules for the game, and it will help you see what happens next after that game. I'm obviously not going to show you any of these spoilers. Earlier when we were looking at the quota track, we talked about advancement cards. Sometimes you can get rid of those to gain points. Now, there's a certain amount of assistants that come out at the beginning of the game. You might say, hey, why are you showing me cards that are written on? This is spoilers. No, not really. A lot of these cards, these are the ones that are part of the beginning of the game. When someone takes one of these assistants for the first time, they can name them. But you don't keep all the cards from game to game. They actually get shuffled back in. So you could get an assistant that somebody else used earlier, which is why some of these have names on them. And they just give you special abilities like, hey, whenever you use that cloud port, you gain a point. Or whenever you place a token on the reputation track, gain a point. So a lot of these have different special abilities. Whenever you use the Grandstand, you gain 1 reputation. So these give you different abilities that you can use throughout the game. Also, many different types of cards, as you can imagine, get put into this pile. There's new buildings that will come out and many other different types of cards that I'm not going to talk about. And again, you'll continue taking turns until the progress gets to the end. I know this is upside down because I want to show you this part of the board because you'll be probably sometimes around here with your points. This is glory. Now, at the end of the game, everyone is going to see how many points they have. There'll maybe be some special rules depending on the guidepost, and you'll get a certain amount of stars depending on where you're at. Here, I would get 6 stars because I'm at 69, but if I got just 1 more point, I would get 7 stars. I'd be able to place them on my Charterstone box. So this will allow you to essentially color in certain amount of stars that you got, in this case 6, and over the course of the games you'll be filling these up. These will give you different rewards at the beginning of each game as you build those different strategies up. In between games, you're not able to hold everything through, as I mentioned earlier, but over the course of the game, if you lose games, you'll be able to essentially get more capacity and hold more things like resources and money. And every time you win the game, you'll get to color these in. They'll be worth a certain amount of points at the end of the 12-game campaign. And the last thing I want to mention is really important. You might be asking, well, how can you be filming this before playing it? Because the board is empty. Well, the board's actually double-sided. I'm not showing the backside. It's double-sided, and both of them look exactly like this, because after you finish a 12-game campaign, you can buy a recharge pack. I think it's about 30 bucks, and it basically will give you all of the cards and components to redo the game, and you do it on the backside of this board. Now, another important note is that there is an automa system, which allows you to play solo or with a less amount of players, or even to replace an active charter. See, in this game, there are 6 charters, and all of them will be used whether you play with 6 people or not. The inactive charters will still be active. Buildings will be built there throughout the time by other people and things, but there's also ways to either include those inactive charters as active, or if someone can't show up to the game that day, you can have them be run by an automa system. In this case, basically cards will get flipped, and certain things will happen that the automa will do to take up spots and do certain things. I don't want to spoil any of this, but there is a way to kind of drop in and drop out players throughout the campaign. It's not recommended because if you drop out, the scores won't be relevant at the end of the 12-game campaign, but it is possible to at least play the game if the same people aren't there, if someone has to miss a day or something like that. And it's the best way, probably, it's the only way to play solo, and it's also a very good way to play a 2-player game. All right, well, there was Charterstone. Now I'm gonna give you some non-spoiler feelings of this game. There's a lot I wanna talk about, and there's a lot of things I would like to reference here, because we did play through the entire campaign, but this is a non-spoiler review, so I'm gonna try to stay as vague as possible, but still giving you my feelings and try to, my number one hope here is to set your expectations correctly for what this game is and what this game isn't. So let's start with the things that I like the most about them. And a lot of these things you may have already known about, but I'm gonna comment on them as well. So first of all, the game starts off as what I would call a light Euro game. There's just a few spots out on the board. You've got workers, you're placing them down, you're taking actions, you're managing resources and money and trying to gain points and finish objectives and build buildings and open crates and do those sort of things. And so it starts off as a light Euro game. But as things happen and you build the buildings and you open the crates, you open that index box, you start pulling out cards, usually multiple cards every time you open up a crate, and you're getting all sorts of new things that I'm not going to talk about here, but most of them are new buildings and things like that, but also new types of cards and new types of rules and new types of everything. And so that's the best aspect of any legacy game, right? Is the exploration of what are you going to be finding next. So I like how it starts off very light, very easy. And then as people are getting the different buildings and opening the different crates, you're getting new rules and you're seeing new things come into play, which is very fun. I think this is actually a good next step game, because you could take someone who's played a entry-level worker placement game, perhaps like Fabled Fruit, which is my favorite example of a worker placement game for entry level, because it's very easy, it looks family friendly, you can teach pretty much anybody that game, plus that game morphs as it goes along. And if they've played that, you take them to this, well, okay, this starts as a light Euro, probably still heavier than what Fabled Fruit was, but then you have that same thing where everything's changing, and by the time you get to the end of this, man, there are some crunchy, tough decisions to make as the game goes on. So I think this is actually a great next step game. I like how the starting of each game, there's something different going on. There's different rules for that game on some of them, many of them. And there's different things that you're able to have and not have at the beginning of each round. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I talked a little bit about the overview, but certain amount of things that you can carry on and select at the beginning of the game. And I like that, because based upon what buildings are out there, based upon what temporary rules are there for the game, based upon the cards that you've gotten throughout the game, your starting choices at the beginning of the game matter, and they will change your strategy really much for that game or what you might focus on. I like that. That sort of changes every game. I like how that every campaign, once you're done, will end up different depending on what gets built, what doesn't get built, because our board ended up in a specific way, but somebody else's board might be completely different. And if this same group of mine played it exactly again, the same way with a brand new thing, it would probably still look different, because different things are going to come out at different times and things like that, and I think that's really cool about that. You can, if you want to, add or drop players using that Automa system. I did test out the Automa system. For that, I would say it's obviously absolutely necessary for a solo game. I would recommend you play this with more people, because I think the experience is going to be the best. If you're playing with 2 players, I think the Automa system is also going to be absolutely necessary, playing with 2 Automas to get the board going. Now, there is a way that even if you play with less than 6 and you're not playing with the Automa system, the inactive charters, the ones that aren't being played, are going to be getting buildings each round at the beginning, so it will fill up normally. Like with us, we played with 4 players for the entire campaign, and so even the other charters, the inactive ones, were getting filled up because buildings get placed there at the beginning. But the Automa system, I would say it's best for lower player counts, or if you need to have someone step out and you want to have that charter keep going that game. So it's good that that's there. More on that in just a moment. And then obviously there's that refresh pack available, where you can play through the entire campaign, and then you can buy the refresh pack. I think it's about $30, and then you can basically, the board is double-sided, so you flip the board over, it's brand new again, and you can basically buy that refresh kit and just start over again and play the campaign again with the same people or different people, it doesn't matter. So those are the things I liked about the game. Now, the game itself, again, as just an overall commentary, it is a pretty straightforward worker placement game. Tough, tight decisions, money, resources, going where other people go, different decisions, different tracks. Very straight edge Euro game that I did enjoy the mechanisms of the game. So let's get to some of the things that I want to sort of align your expectations and tell you how my expectations were kind of different than what I had hoped. Number one, let me go with a brief con here, and I think this is for all legacy games, at least, let me rephrase that. For all legacy games that I've played, you're encouraged to stay with the same group, meaning the same people played through it. And here I think you're also very much encouraged to play the whole thing, because as I mentioned, you could pull people out and use the Automa system, but if someone's not there, you can either replace them with someone else, which isn't the best because they're not going to know the rules, you have to teach them everything. But if you pull someone out and like they can't show up that night, I would recommend not playing it as opposed to using the automa system, because their points aren't really going to matter as much towards the end if you leave them out and put an automa in, because they're not going to be getting the same types of things, and it could ruin the end game scoring. So you really need to play this game with the same group all the way through. That I don't like as much, but I know it's a necessary evil in Legacy, and many of the other Legacy games like this are the same way. So this is not a nitpick on Charterstone itself, kind of just being warned that when you play Legacy games, especially this one, you're going to want to play with the same people all the way through. Another sort of small nitpick is that as you're discovering new things and opening different boxes and finding new things, some of the times you'll open a box and there's multiple things in there and you're only pulling out one set of something, but you're able to almost see what else is in that box and you get curious, and it kind of ruined the surprise a little bit for us. So I wish, now I know that the game has to be a certain price and a lot of thought has gone into this game, but I wish that all of the different items were in their own little tuck boxes so that when you open one up, you didn't see things that you were going to get later. Now we come to the biggest thing for me, which is the expectations. Now, my only reference here is to Pandemic Legacy. It's the only pure Legacy game I've played, and that game was crazy on the story side of things, crazy plot twists, crazy things that you're working towards one goal, and then later on you realize that, wow, that's the opposite of what you should have been doing, and just things that really, like tidal waves, change how the game felt, change the story, change that. And so going into this game, I'm thinking, oh great, it's gonna be a worker placement game. Jamey Stegmaier's doing it. It's gonna be obviously mechanically sound. And if it can do all these crazy Legacy things like Pandemic did, wow, maybe we'll be, cooperating with each other for a little while, and then maybe turning on each other, and just all these crazy things might be happening. And it was maybe my not correct expectations going into it. But I think those expectations made me not as excited towards the end of this game as I normally would have been if my expectations were aligned right, which is why this video, my main thing is to align your expectations. My expectations was hoping for big plot twists, great overarching story, lots of detail, things going on there, and that's not really part of this Legacy game. This is a very solid, mechanically sound, Euro-style worker placement game where as the game goes on, you're going to get new choices, new buildings, new types of things that I'm not going to mention, and the game changed. And for people that are looking for that experience and just want that Euro-style experience without a big overarching story, with no huge plot twists or anything like that, you're going to enjoy this game. But if you go into this game thinking that there's going to be all this crazy stuff like there was in Pandemic Legacy, you're going to find yourself disappointed a little bit, I think. So just keep that in mind, because I was hoping for the latter. That doesn't mean I didn't enjoy the game. We all enjoyed the game. It was mechanically sound. I couldn't think, and the fact that he can pull this off, all of the different types of buildings and cards and things connecting to each other, and all the ways where it says, hey, if you haven't pulled this out yet, you better pull it out now. I can't even imagine the amount of work it went to make this game what it was, because it is a design masterpiece. But just go into it with the right thinking that it is going to be very straight edge Euro and not huge plot twists or super surprising. Now, there were 4 things that happened in the game, which obviously I'm not going to mention, that we wrote down when they happened and went, wow, that is really cool. So there are those moments that are like, oh, cool. Now, some of those moments we had hoped afterwards, or they would have turned into something even more spectacular. They didn't end up doing that. So it was like 4 moments that we wrote down that were rememberable moments that we will still talk about. But there were ones that I wished were developed a little bit further into different, even more cooler, spectacular things. So what I'm saying is the game, we enjoyed it. Mechanically, it's sound. The components are awesome. The art's awesome. Design is tight, and it's amazingly designed. Just go into it with the right expectations, and I think you're going to thoroughly enjoy the game. And I hope that my experience and my misalignment of expectations has helped you align yours so that when you do play it, you'll have a better time with it. Another thing, please take your time with this game. We got this game a month before the review was able to go out. We played the entire campaign, and I would have played it less frequently, and I think you'll enjoy it more if you play it less frequently as opposed to just trying to finish it. We kept thinking, oh man, something cool's gonna happen. Let's just keep playing and playing and playing. And that, again, that Pandemic Legacy never happened. And so we felt like we were chasing something that wasn't there. Take your time, enjoy the design of the game. And one last thing, the game itself, even though ours ended at the end of the 12th campaign, you can keep playing the game. And with ours, it was really interesting because we've calculated that we could probably play the game 4 to 5 more times and still be having new things coming out before it's all gone, before you would need to even get a refresh pack. And I think that's amazing. Now, again, your mileage is going to vary depending on how fast you build things and things like that. But overall, I hope I've helped sort of put this in a box for you that will allow you to make a decision on your own. Solid game. That is Charterstone.
This video was sponsored by Miniature Market's Review Corner. The Review Corner features podcasts, video, and written game reviews by gamers for gamers. Miniature Market, the online gaming superstore. Thousands of board games, discounted prices. Check them out at miniaturemarket.com.